I'm Angela Mackey-Rutledge. I'm the program and chair of the Black Law Students Association. I'm an LLM student here at George Mason. We're here for the Black Hair Big Law Symposium, and we have a number of speakers lined up. Our first speaker really is introducing it. It's Bianca Siggers, Hancock Siggers, who is our BLSA president, and she has a short message for us, which I'm going to play.
Hello and welcome to the Black Hair Big Law Symposium. I am Bianca Hancock Siggers, the Black Law Student Association's president at George Mason University Antonin Scalia School of Law. I want to first start off with thanking Angela for coming up with the idea for this symposium and making sure that it happened. My hope is that when I enter the legal field and walk through a courtroom, my professionalism and my character does not come into question based on the style of my hair. And that's whether I choose to wear cornrows, individual braids, locks, or an afro. I want to be accepted as I am without the pressure to conform to an aesthetic that I cannot achieve naturally. Now, our work here is important because we are striving for complete inclusivity as it relates to Black hair in big law. Thank you for helping us do the work, and I hope to see you soon, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we are going to start off with a very short video for I was going to start us off with a short video, but because we're running just a little bit behind schedule, we're going to skip the video and we're going to go to ABA president, Ms. Deborah Enix-Ross. So she is president of the ABA, and I am so pleased and so happy that she's been able to make it to this event. And she is here with us on Zoom.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for this invitation. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I did think it was important for me, especially, to come by and to tell you how important this topic is, and to tell you that I wholeheartedly support you and your effort. Clearly, as an African-American woman who wears her hair braided, and I've been wearing my hair braided now for the last 30 plus years, I understand how important it is to have conversations that reaffirm our ability to have the kinds of hairstyles that we want without being judged, as our previous speaker just announced. And I want to tell you just briefly my own journey to my hairstyle. When I graduated from law school more than 40 years ago, so now I've been practicing 40 years, I graduated in 1981, it was really uncommon for people to have their hair braided. And I remember at that time going on interviews and bringing up the question myself, because it was almost viewed as if you were a radical or a troublemaker or didn't want to conform. And I hope that we are getting beyond that, but I think conversations like this will help certainly underscore that we need to have the ability to wear our hair in any way that we want without being judged for it. So thank you for this opportunity to join with you. And I look forward to hearing more of the conversation.
Thank you so much. And I am so pleased that you were able to join us. Sorry, I'm here on the other side of the room. Thank you, and I'd like to thank other members of the ABA who helped arrange having me here. All right, we're doing some trying to get the screen down and to show it so that the audience can actually see the voices that are coming through. Next, we're going to have Umar speaking. Umar, if you could just give us 1 minute so we can adjust to see if we can get the actual screen to display.
No worries.
You want me to get like a library technician person?
That would be great. Yeah. Okay, and while we're waiting for this to come on, what I will do is show the short video that we didn't get a chance to speak earlier. We got it, we got it. See everyone now. Right. All right. So our next presenter, Umar. Umar, excuse me if I mispronounce your last name. Is it Kankika?
Kankia.
Kankia. Okay.
Yeah.
Umar Kankia. He is a solicitor in the UK, and he is going to speak about his experiences, and not just hair, but also sort of access to law and mental health, and what his experience has been.
Thank you very much, Angela, and good morning to everybody at the symposium. Thank you very much for having me appear today. I'm appearing from London, so sorry I can't be there in person to speak, but Angela had contacted me because she told me about this fantastic initiative that is going on today, and I think it's so important to speak openly about the challenges that people face within the law, especially for Black people. You know, issues to do with hair, issues to do with culture. These are all things that, you know, we as Black people continue to face as challenges when we go into the law. Now, I've been a lawyer for 10 years. I've been qualified for 10 years this year. I've been practicing in the area of law for around 11 and a half years. So I was a paralegal before I qualified in 2012. I specialize in the field of mental health and mental capacity law. And what that means is I represent people who have been detained against their own will under the Mental Health Act here in the UK. And the purpose is that people have said that they are suffering from a mental disorder and that they need to be detained in the interest of their own health, safety, or protection of other people. So my role is to come in and to advocate to see how can I try and get them out of hospital, back into the community, and also be able to be supported whilst they're in the community to avoid coming back into the hospital situation. Now, my journey into the law wasn't a straightforward one. I graduated with a lower second class honours in law back in 2006. I did my law school in 2006, 2007. And I struggled to get into the law itself, partly because of my grades, but partly I think because, unfortunately here in the UK, in England and Wales, which is the jurisdiction that I practice in, institutional racism is a thing. Now, I have a lot of experience doing a lot of things outside of the law. So in those years between when I was looking to practice and then practicing, I was actually working in the field of youth participation. And within that, I was working in kind of youth politics and being able to work with young people who've been elected to represent other young people in their local areas in the UK, in London and beyond. And the skill set that I've picked up allowed me, I believe, to enter the law in 2010 and be able to offer something completely different, because I was somebody who came in who has a very different skill set. I had dealings with politicians. I'd worked with prime ministers, I'd worked with ministers, I've worked with various different politicians. So I knew how to handle people in a very different way compared to a lot of people who had graduated and gone straight into law school and who'd qualified, and gone straight into practicing. And one of the big challenges that I face, I mean, you can't see it, or you may be able to tell, I'm not sure. It's sat down at the moment, but I'm a big black guy, and there's a whole issue here in the UK, especially around black men and the perception that people have of black men in the UK. And I'm sure, and I know for a fact, that the perception that people have of black men in the US. So people will always see me as being a threat. People will see me as, oh my God, has this guy come to rob me? When I turn up to court, is this guy the defendant? All of these kind of things, which is absolutely ridiculous. Even though, when I turn up to court, I'd like to pride myself on the fact that I'm a pretty well sharp dressed man. I like to think that I look good when I'm ready to go into battle in the law in the courtroom. And this was something that was a challenge for me when I initially entered the law, because all of a sudden I'm finding that I'm having to code switch quite a lot. And I'm sure most of you know what code switching is, but for those who aren't aware, is basically you're having to be someone that you don't naturally subscribe to, but you're doing it in order to be able to be accepted by the people that you're meant to be around. Now, here in the UK, statistically, we have 24% of lawyers that are qualified are from a black or ethnic minority background. So I'm going into an institution which is predominantly white, who people are looking at you like, well, you shouldn't really be here, because I grew up in a very deprived area of London, and people look at you in a particular way. So I would say probably for the first 3-4 years of my legal career, I was having to code switch. So I could quite easily go from listening to Drake in my car or Jay-Z on my way to work, and then suddenly kind of having to go very prim, proper, and try and assimilate essentially to be able to be accepted. And this takes a huge toll on your mental health, because you're constantly having to code switch, you're constantly having to think about what you're having to say, and you're constantly afraid that if you were to slip into your natural self, that's going to be a problem. What I found over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, and I think this probably comes with experience and age, and being a father, I don't care anymore. I'm very much like, you know what? You're going to accept me for who I am. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I do. I'm a damn good lawyer. I'm very good at what I do. So you cannot take away from the fact that, because of that, my blackness is going to come through. So I'm not celebrating, being black in the month of October because it's Black History Month. I'm black 365 days in a year. I've been black since 1985 when I was born. I can't escape the fact that I am black. So you're going to learn to embrace my culture. You're going to learn to understand who I am. If I want to eat jollof rice at work, I'm going to bring jollof rice to work. Do you know what I mean? Because that's my food. I'm not going to start to assimilate just because other people want me to do that. But I think it's very important when you are in the workplace to kind of try and ensure that you are trying to be your most authentic self as possible. And if you're finding that you're in a situation where people are trying to push back on that quite a lot, people are not embracing that, then you have to think about whether that is the right environment for you to be working in the first place. Because ultimately you want to be in a position and in a place where you are comfortable with being who you are comfortable with being your true authentic self. And by being your true authentic self, it means that you can be the damn best lawyer that you can possibly be. And that is what it's about. So I celebrate each and every one of you that are here today. I celebrate all of those who've paved the way for people like me to come through. I've just heard previous speaker who's been practicing law for 40 years. I've only been practicing for 10, but it's women like yourself and men as well who've paved the way for us to be able to practice law both here in the UK and in the States and all over the world. And I see myself as essentially a gatekeeper in the sense of I will continue to speak my truth. I will continue to be my authentic self. And by doing that, I'm helping to break down the barriers and break down the views that people have and the perceptions that people have of a person that's a black man or a black woman that's a lawyer. And hopefully the next generation, which is you guys who are coming through, do not have to go through the same challenges and the same issues that we've had to face going through in the law. And I think it's important that we continue to have these conversations. We continue to celebrate our blackness. I love the fact that I'm seeing people with locks, with braids, with afros in the workplace. It's great. I'm married to a black woman, and I remember when she made the choice 4 years ago no, longer than that, to say, actually, I want to embrace my natural hair. And I was like, yeah, you go for it, babe. You do that, because people need to see that's who you are. That is your true authentic self. So never let anyone try and take that away from you. And I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and good luck to all of you in your journeys in becoming lawyers. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like, if possible, for Ms. Enix-Ross, if you could pop up on the screen if you're still there, so our photographer can get a photo of you. If not, then we'll try and arrange something some other point. But if you are here, you can pop on the screen just for 30 seconds so we can get a photo.
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes, thank you. Okay, just having the photographer get a photo of the screen. Oops. Actually, could you speak? Because as soon as you stop speaking, then you go back to a small.
Certainly, I'm happy to say.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant.
Was that good enough?
That's
And
enough.
while I have the floor, so to speak, I just wanted to commend the previous speaker for your very powerful words. I think it's important for us to recognize that these are not just domestic issues, these are global issues. And when we stand united as a people, it's very powerful.
Thank you. Okay, up next, we have Professor Rochard and Professor Greene. And I could talk to these two women all day. They're not only stand in front of the camera, not only are they highly intelligent, very funny, very personal, they get along and they understand things. And one thing I admire about them, when I previously spoken to them, they're able to articulate things about the world, about race, about racism that I haven't, that I know are just small ideas floating in my head. They can articulate them, just sort of cut through. And so they're really smart, they're really on point. And I'm so excited that we are going to sort of be peering into a conversation with them. So we have Professors Rochard and Greene. Hello.
Hi. Hello and good morning. And first I want to say that it is such an honor and a privilege to appear on this panel with all of these beautiful, wonderful people who are sitting in front of me, in front of us. It's an honor. And I want to say to Umar, we have an expression in this country. Let the church say amen. Amen. And let the church say amen, because he laid it right where it needs to be. And as I tell my students, I teach law school, as I tell my students in class, because I'm blackity black, because I'm black. And I think they understand and know what I'm talking about. But we were going to, Shelley and I were going to talk just briefly about this whole notion of policing our bodies. And we are in the process of writing an article called The Anita Hillification of Ketanji Brown Jackson. So that ought to tell you kind of where our heads are. But this whole notion of policing our bodies made me think of the respectability error. And for the students who are in the audience who may not know it, there have been different periods in our time history that can be called the respectability errors. And that's when Black women thought, if I'm just respectable, if I talk properly, if I walk properly, if I dress properly, if I comb my hair properly, then I'll be accepted. And what we realized was that it's not about our hair. It's not about our big butts. It's not about our wide noses or our lips or our brown skin. It's about us.
That's right.
The threat that we present, because we exude power. And the power is unmistakable when we unite and come together. So we are being picked apart feature by feature. We're never good enough. We're never smart enough. We're never whatever enough. So I concur with, I'm going to deliver me to you every day that we are together. It's so, just a little story. One of my students got in trouble with the bar and asked me to be a witness. And I said, certainly. And it was on Zoom. And I forgot that my thing says she, her, queen. And so when the screen came up, I'm sitting in front of 10 white men. And I'm like, oh Lord, they see that queen up there. What does this mean? And one of the white guys leaned into the camera and said, good morning, queen. And I said, all right. I don't have to change who and what I am to satisfy anybody. My problem is, and Shelley, I want you to speak to this a little bit, is when we start policing each other.
Yes.
Because we've been so indoctrinated that we start, why she wear her hair like that? Why she got them curly cues? Why she wearing that afro in there?
Yes.
When we start doing that to each other,
That's
nobody else has to do it to us, because
That's
we've
right.
taken up the mantle
That's
of
right.
policing our bodies for each other. I teach at a HBCU, and every day somebody walks in there, purple hair, pink hair, green hair, hair down to the floor, hair up in the sky. They are representing who and what they are on any given day, and I love it and I support it. So when we start talking about this word professionalism, to me, that's a buzzword for respectability, because you get all of me when you get me. And nobody polices white women the way they police us. They may say she's too skinny but they don't go into the details. No. Like they go into the details, and I'm using the term they generically, like they do with us. We're never good enough. And I am here to say we are fabulous, just as we present. So Shelley, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on my little spiel?
Well, so one of the things that I think about is when our ancestors were on the continent of Africa, and you look at our history, we had royal hairstyles. Just the way that our hair grows out of our scalp, it grows up, and I believe that it grows up in praise of God. And so one of the things that I think about when our ancestors were enslaved people, because they were not slaves, they were enslaved people, enslaved human beings. Black women had to wear coverings on their hair. Slave masters it was enforced that you had to cover your hair, because I believe our hair can be intimidating. Not familiar with it, but I can tell you the pushback I've gotten as a Black woman has come from other Black women, not white women. Just last week, y'all, I was in the copy room, and this is a real story. I have a secretary, her name is Cynthia Heisner, and she's helping me at the printer. And she walks up, and I can feel her staring at me. And she says, Shelley, I love your hair. It's beautiful. And I looked at her and she said, I don't know what it is, but I sit and I spend hours on YouTube looking at Black women getting their hair done. She said, my mother was a hairstylist, and I have seen styles on white women my whole life. And to be honest with you, it's just ordinary. She said, but Black women have amazing hair. And so, and I'm not saying that other Black women don't support Black women, but the pushback I've gotten, so I went to Howard University undergrad. And y'all, the way my hair grows out of my skull is kinky. It's hard to get a comb through my hair. And so growing up, probably as soon as I started walking, my mother put a perm on my hair. Well, I didn't know that there was another way. So I decided when I was at Howard, I'm gonna stop putting these chemicals on my hair. My hair started falling out. I didn't know how to take care of my natural hair. So Umar, I visited South Africa. I was in Cape Town in 2012, and everybody had dreadlocks in South Africa, Umar. So I thought, dang, you know what? I'm gonna start locking my hair. But before I did that, I cut it down to a little afro, and it was in 2008. In 2009, I met President Obama in the Oval Office of the White House. And y'all, I got the picture on my shelf. Black people have consistently come into my office and said, who's that boy meeting President Obama? That's me, y'all. I encourage Bianca, you did a great job with your opening statement, and all of the panelists. I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity to come and speak and celebrate who we are in the way that God created us to be. I'm not putting any more creamy crack on my hair, on my scalp, just can't do it. And so Professor Broussard, I just want to thank you for being a mentor and for being a light. President Enix-Ross, thank you for wearing your acceptable for somebody like me to be okay in the way that God made us to be. So I just applaud all Angela and the Black Law Students Association for giving us an opportunity to be who we are. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for thinking that we had something to say and to contribute to the discourse. And I have granddaughters and grandsons, and I want them to look up to each and every one of you. I want that, my little grandson, he said to me the other day, I want big hair, Grandma. I'm growing out my hair big. And so I said, go for it, baby. So when we are our authentic selves, we allow our generations that come after us. We are that example to them. And when we stop policing each other and telling each other who and what we can be, and just embrace, I don't care what you do to your hair, it represents you. And you accept all of me or you accept none of me. So Angela, thank you so much for allowing us to have this discourse. And I look forward to hearing from all of the other speakers today. Thank you.
I got to say real quickly, I just want to thank my law students who are now practicing attorneys. Sarah Boer from Knoxville, Tennessee, a white female who supports me just the way I am, and all of my law students and my Facebook friends that have signed on. Thank you for supporting us.
Okay, so next I keep forgetting that the podium is over here, and so I've been putting over there. So next we have Rachel Antoinette Joyce. So a couple things. One thing that really inspired me to put on, the symposium was after having watched this video that Rachel is in. Now I meant to play the video at the start, but we had some technical difficulties. I'd still like to play that video at some point before our couple of hours are up. Now, Rachel and I, we did a recorded session yesterday, but she is here live, so I would like her just to pop in and say hi, and then I can certainly play the video. Rachel?
I'm here. Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm really enjoying all these conversations. So thank you for being here, to my other panelists, and to Angela and the team for putting on this amazing program.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to play the video. Now, our conversation, I'm someone who can be very, very chatty. The conversation went on for 17 minutes, so we won't have a chance to play the whole thing, but it is on YouTube, and I'm going to link it from the Black Hair Big Law website. So you can, so everyone can watch it in full. So we'll see probably the first like 6, 7, 8 minutes, something like that. And then I will try to play the video that she's in. And this video is just about wearing black hair in law, which is really apt. And it was, you know, the inspiration for, you know, this whole symposium.
All right, we're here with Rachel Antoinette Boyce, who is an associate at Kline, who has worked from going from LLM to LLB to an associate at Kline. And she is doing she's a transactional attorney. She's focusing on financings, acquisitions, ventures, purchase to sales, etc. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you so much for attending the symposium and agreeing to take part in this. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I just wanted to, I think the transition is LLB, LLM, and then all
Oh,
of
sorry.
Don't even worry about it, but all good. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be taking part in this presentation.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got a few questions, but one thing I was curious about is, so you were one of the people featured in the Law 360 video, which really inspired me. Once I got the idea to do the symposium, and I went and I Googled and I tried to research, that video was the first thing I saw. So you were one of the first people to really inspire the symposium. So thank you. Thank you for what you said on there. Thank you for being you. How did you take part in it? Like, how did it come about? If you don't mind speaking about that.
Yeah, I mean, it really came out as a beautiful video. And I was actually thinking about that today because to be very honest with you, when they first came out with the idea, the editor, she had reached out and she had reached out to a friend of mine who agreed. So 2 of the individuals in the video are actually like my friends, they're lawyers, we hang out, and they had taken part in the video and sent my name as another person that had natural hair. And I had said, no, I'm like, I'm not doing this. And the editor, she called, she followed up, she sent reminders. And I honestly, initially, I was afraid to do it or just didn't want to, because I'm like, here it is, we're doing another conversation about blackness, black hair, black clothing, black whatever, what's going to change, right? And I just wanted to be so intentional with my time and not necessarily be involved in these activities, which create a conversation and then there's no action behind it, right? And then I looked more into the act and I had discussed it with my friends and I'm like, you know what, let me do this. This might be just one of those things that really allows us to move the needle a little more. And I was actually very impressed with, you know, the attention that it got. I've been invited to so many panels after that video and people were genuinely curious about it and, you know, wanted to have more conversations about how, being Black as a Black woman included, you know, your hair, right? It's just not the color of your skin, but your hair is a part of that. So in the end, I'm very happy I did it. And I'm really happy with the attention that it has received.
Yeah, it's a really well done video. It's short. Well, my only complaint is that it wasn't longer. I mean, I could have watched, you know, another like hour of, you know, people speaking on it. So, but it was very good. All right. So one of the questions I have for you is like, between law school and now, what have been the biggest changes in how you wear your hair?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, in law school, I definitely wore my hair pretty natural. You know, I went to Berkeley Law and it's a pretty chill, liberal, you know, type of school. And so I never felt like uncomfortable wearing my hair in its natural state, right? In law school, just as a practical matter, I did hairstyles that were easy because I did not like to wake up every day and have to fluff a puff or have to like pull my hair back in a ponytail. Those things just stay, you know, natural hair. An extra 15, 20, sometimes 45 minutes trying to get your hair in order. So I did a lot of like, you know, even natural hair braids, right? So I would braid my real hair and, you know, have a style that would last me a week. And then, you know, sometimes I would do protective styles, braids or something like that, but not because I didn't like wearing my natural hair, just, you know, especially the final semester, studying for exams, studying for the bar. As a practical matter, I just did not want to commit the time to doing my hair every single morning or making sure that it looked a certain way. So that was law school. And I think when I transitioned into my first job, I definitely paid more attention to my hair. I took the time then. I would wake up every morning and I would pull it back in a ponytail. I would wear it straight at times. There was one time in particular that I had worn it straight, and I think that was actually when I took my firm photo. So in my first job, I took a firm photo, and I wanted my image on the website to be that of like straight hair, and it's long, and it's all whatever, and I thought about that, and as I transitioned into my second firm, I said, I will never do that again, right? Like I'll never go through the process of, not that there's anything wrong with having a style which is straight for a temporary time. I think that's okay if that's what you choose to do, but my decision behind that was to present myself as something other than myself. It wasn't a protective style that day. It wasn't something that I was trying to do because I just wanted to be cute. I really wanted to present myself in a way that looked, you know, corporate or professional. And so I had to challenge my own thoughts. And by the time I was transitioning into my second firm, I'm like, I'm going with my hair like this. You know, if you look at my firm photo, it was at the time I was experimenting with color, and I'm like, I'm gonna have my hair dyed, it's a little brown and it's out. And I want my clients to see that. I want my teammates and my fellow attorneys to see that, you know, they're not seeing a different person. This is who I am, and I'm gonna wear that proudly. And I've been doing that, you know.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it there just for short of time, but that video will be available on our website to watch in full, the whole 17 minutes. And I really want to thank Rachel for accommodating my schedule to record that clip. She's on the West Coast, and so we thought it might be a bit early, and she might have some client stuff going on, which is why she didn't speak here. So we just thought, let's be on the safe side and record it. But I want to thank her for accommodating my schedule, because I've just recently flown back to London without my luggage, without any of my hair stuff. So I'm looking different than I normally look, so I don't have any of my anything. So thank you. We're next going to move on to the Honorable Terkessa Rollins, who is a judge here in Virginia. And she is here live in person. All right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm actually really excited to be here because this is my alma mater. I graduated from George Mason Law School in 2001. My class was probably one of the first classes to actually be in this building. When we started off in the old, I think they've actually knocked that building down since then, but it was like an old hex building. It had an escalator and everything. But at any rate, it's really good to be back here. I'm very happy to speak on this topic. So I graduated from here in 2001, and I went into my law career not too long after that. One of the professors who spoke indicated that, you know, when she was young, her mom put a relaxer in her hair. Similar situation for myself. I had a relaxer before I had a choice. Okay. When I was here in George Mason, I had my first daughter. And then as I was walking out the door of George Mason Law School, I was pregnant with my second daughter. And I had already made up in my mind that I was not going to relax their hair, even though my hair was actually still relaxed. And part of it was, you know, I wanted my daughters to have that choice, to be able to decide what to do with their hair. I didn't have that choice. And even though I wanted to go natural, I actually waited a while to do it. Because of that perception of being professional in the legal world. I wrote down some notes listening to our other speakers. So Mr. Umar Kankaya talked about being your authentic self and allowing that to break down barriers. That is so poignant because for me, I will tell you my own personal journey. Again, wanting to have gone natural, but kind of being afraid to do so. When I started the journey to wanting to become a judge, I said, oh, I'm not gonna go natural till after I become a judge. Like they are not gonna put me on the bench with my natural hair. And I really and truly I was very serious about that. So I was kind of waiting it out. Okay, when is this gonna happen? When is this gonna happen? And eventually I said to my husband, I said, you know what? I actually can't worry about that. Like I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start transitioning my hair. And I started transitioning. It's probably been at this point, it's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I started my transition. And lo and behold, once I became my authentic self, right? Everything started falling into place. So I would certainly encourage everyone, you know, it's really a different culture. I mean, I graduated in 2001. That actually wasn't that long ago. That was 21 years ago. My daughter will be 21 tomorrow, the one who I was pregnant with when I left law school. It's not that long ago, but these issues still exist, but not as much, So, and I know there's a question and answer, so I'm not gonna take over. But one of the greatest things that I experienced was coming to Alexandria, watching one of my mentors at his investiture onto the federal district court bench. And one of his colleagues was a Black female judge who literally had an afro that was like this big. And I just sat there in awe. Now, at this point, I don't even remember if I had taken my seat out as a judge yet. I may have, but actually, yeah, I think I had already taken my seat, but I was like really new, maybe within 4 or 5 months. I was in awe of this woman. She was beautiful, she was authentic, and I had never seen a judge with an afro. In 2019, I think was the year. When I had my own investiture, I asked my daughters, I was like, oh, how should I wear my hair? How should I wear my hair? They were like, oh, straighten it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to straighten my hair. Like the whole reason for me transitioning to natural hair is because I want to wear my hair the way it comes out of my head naturally. And I don't want to fall back into that realm like Ms. Boyce just talked about with regards to taking the picture, right, with the natural hair so that you look more corporate or whatever. Nope, I didn't want to do that. So when I had my investiture, my hair was actually out and curly, and I had even stuck a couple of rhinestone hairpins in my hair. So when they took the picture for the local newspaper, I have red rhinestone pins sticking out of my hair. But I just, again, you know, we've definitely shifted in terms of our self-image. I encourage you all to continue doing that. Never feel like you have to be put into a box because of who we are naturally. We are beautiful the way God made us, and you know, we will be accepted. Policing each other, we do that. We are our hardest critics. Never have I had anyone outside of our race say anything about, you know, hair or appearance or whatever. It's always us. So on that, Ms. Matt, happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any audience questions to start off with?
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Michael. Howard Law.
Hi, Michael.
Could you talk a little bit more about the process of kind of being a judge? How long did that take? Difficult.
I sure can. So in Virginia, judges are appointed by the General Assembly. And the way that it works as a practical matter is your local delegation. So I'm in Prince William County. So the local Prince William delegation, the senators and the delegates there, you know, they're the ones who choose who the candidate is going to be for a particular opening. And then that, you know, once they make that decision, then it goes before the Courts of Justice Committee, and then it goes before the entire General Assembly for vote. My personal journey is, I can tell you exactly when I started the journey. Started the journey in January 2012. Okay, that was the very first time that I decided to put my name in for an opening in Prince William County. And I think at that time it was actually Regional District Court. So I put my name in. I did not get the appointment. And truth be told, most times, most folks don't get it the first time. But once you know, kind of put your name out there now, it's like, you know, all eyes are on me and now everybody's looking and, you know, oh, is she really going to be a good judge, etc. I didn't get the seat, but I actually got a substitute judge position. So one of the judges that they did choose to sit in the seat was a substitute judge. And once he was elevated to the bench as a full-time judge, his seat as a substitute judge was open, and I was able to get that opening. And for the next 7 years, I was a substitute judge. I would, you know, routinely put my name in when additional openings came about. But everything happens according to God's plan and then God's time. So it was a perfect storm for me when it happened, because in 2019, which is the year of my appointment, that was also the year that my youngest child was graduating from high school. And so, you know, if any of you in here are parents, you already understand just kind of what the demands are of being a parent and then a working parent. My children were involved in sports. They were involved in all kinds of extracurricular activities. So as a practical matter, it would have been kind of difficult to be a judge and then also be juggling those things. So it all worked out. She was graduating in June. I took the bench July 1, and it's been great. But it was a journey, and it's scary. You know, it's very scary because you are literally putting yourself out there on a pedestal, and everyone is now looking at you. Everything you do, you're constantly being evaluated. But never, you know, never let fear take over. That's my job.
Any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So, hi, I'm Sabrina Peralta. I'm a 2L here at the law school. Thank you for being here. And I was just curious about your experience as a Black woman judge, like how, I guess, the treatment that you've received from other judges, like if you've gotten the same level of respect, and just what positive and negatives there have been.
So, again, you know, for me, I've been a judge now for 3 years. I will say that, I actually haven't had any negative experiences. My bench is 5 of us who are judges. So just so you understand kind of the makeup of Prince William County, the first Black judge to be appointed in Prince William County was a female judge by the name of Janice Wellington. And she served in the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court for 30 years. Before she retired last, I think it was 20, she might have retired in 2020 actually, in 2020, but she was there for 30 years. I can literally count all the minority judges that we've had, because it hasn't been that many, but after her, then we had a Black male judge. And then one of my predecessors was a Black female judge on the General District Court in Prince William County. And she is now sitting in the Circuit Court of Prince William County as the first Black female judge there. I now have another colleague. So my bench is 5 judges, 2 of us are female, and one of the male judges is a Black male judge, and he's the first Black male judge to sit on that bench. But it's a very, very very supportive environment. I haven't had any issues. I'm currently the chief judge. I'm the first female chief judge. Well, no, that might not be true. There might have been one female chief judge before me, but I'm definitely the first chief judge of color and definitely the first Black chief judge of color. And I haven't had very many issues at all. So yeah. That now I can tell you, I do know of other judges in different jurisdictions that have had different experiences. So it definitely depends.
Right, so thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
All right, so next. Oh, sorry. Can you, the person? All right, yeah, did someone, mysterious iPhone person, do you have a question?
Yes, my name is Tony Fasciolo. Good morning, Your Honor. I've been in before you, Your Honor, if you remember who I am. But my question was, as a sitting judge, you see many different people, other attorneys in front of you, Black female attorneys. Have you noticed or seen, as far as natural hair wearing attorneys in your courtroom? You talked earlier about how it's like the ideas around it, it's not as much as it was before. And if you could also speak to your experience in private practice before becoming a judge, your experiences then, and any observations you had about, female attorneys that you see, what their thought process, do you see it more natural hair wearing attorneys before you? That's just my general questions. And it's nice to see you. Thank you.
You too, Tony. I know your voice, so I do know Tony.
Before you answer, we're just running a little bit behind.
Sure.
I love the question and I want to hear the answer. But we need to move on. And there's food out there. It's still being set up. So we're going to have Karis speak. And then after that, we will go out and we will get our food. I'm hoping everything has arrived with plates and cups and drinks and everything.
I can answer the question in the chat.
That would be great.
I'll log in and I'll answer the question in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you all for having me.
I have some, one is always. All right. Great. Karis, are you here? So I came across Karis Stephen. She's one of these students that if you were in the same cohort as her, you'd be like, she just does everything well. She's so she plays an instrument. She got a was it a Fulbright scholarship? She went to Korea. She's fashionable, she's smart, she's beautiful, like she's the whole deal, she's the whole package. She's like, and she's nice on top of that. So you can't be like, oh, her, like, because she's a genuinely nice, cool, chill person. She wrote this essay about why she chose to wear her braids to work. She's a 3L at UPenn. And so I have to thank their BLSA for helping me link up with her, because I had to sort of stalk her online before I could make contact. So Karis, why don't you speak and tell us a bit more about your experience at UPenn, and I know you've done some internships or work experience, and why you chose to wear braids.
Yeah, first things first, Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to be a part of something that's so special to me and to the Black legal community everywhere. I am incredibly honored and humbled to be speaking to all of you this morning. And today I want to speak specifically to the law students because that's my current lived experience as a 3L at Penn. And my perspective on Black hair in legal spaces is largely informed by my time in law school. And as you are maybe aware, only 7.94% of law students in the US are Black. So a huge congratulations to all of you listening to this and for showing up to class every day. I know it's hard. I have a final tomorrow, but you are worthy, you are necessary, and just know that you are a certified change maker. So through my studies and through my experiences, I found that all that we're talking about today really comes down to this. The legal profession, which puts adherence to, quote, the Black letter law on a pedestal, must make room for Blackness. And as it stands, this hair growing from my scalp is a legal battleground. And it's one that I knew was contentious even before I knew how to multiply numbers. My hair journey, like many other Black women, was not linear. Dare I say it was curly, which is a bad joke, but I had to do it. I spent a lot of my childhood cursing my hair texture. I grew up in a majority white community in the South where the people around me had what I used to call good hair. And it was hair that grew in a straight line and seemed to cooperate in all environments. It was the kind of hair that I thought I wanted. So I took the route that many Black women do. I got a relaxer to chemically alter my hair starting around the age of 12, and I begged my mom to let me do it. So it kind of went like this. Every couple of months, I saw Melinda, my hairstylist, and every couple of months, I sat in her salon chair coming out of it with burns on my head. And I did this for almost 10 years of my life. And I did this not for the ease of running a comb through my hair or because I liked the straight hair that resulted from the process. I did this because it's what I felt like I had to do in order to be accepted as a Black woman living in America. And I continued to mechanically relax my hair well into my 20s because I had been told that my natural hair was not professional. And it's this word professional that I later came to realize has been weaponized as a term of art, excusing discriminatory behavior in workplace settings. And when it comes to Black hair, the subjective nature of professionalism is deployed as a vehicle for the oppression of expression. And this is not something that I came in knowing. It's a lesson that I had to learn. When I stepped into my first role at a law firm, I was scared. I was the normal amount of nervous for starting a new job, but there was that added layer, that added pressure of my hair. What was I going to do with it? What impression did I want to make? Was my natural hair going to leave a bad taste in my employer's mouth? Would my colleagues judge me? Would this somehow affect my lawyerliness? These were the questions swirling around in my head as I looked at myself in the mirror prepping for the first day. That day I was wearing my hair pinned back in its natural state. And it's these kinds of questions that young people, the next generation, should not have to ask themselves. But unfortunately, this is the way the world has conditioned Black people to look at themselves. And I was not, and I am not immune to those externalities. In fact, these negative perceptions of Black hair and the adverse consequences that come with it have been codified into a regulatory scheme, which affirm my first day fears. In the workplace, employers are allowed to set grooming standards or dress codes that have a disproportionate discriminatory effect on employees of color, particularly Black employees. This is why my hair, our hair, in its natural state of being, just doing what it do, is political. And in 2006, the EEOC, who I did work for a time, detailed in its compliance manual on race and color discrimination that employers are permitted to pass grooming standards as long as, quote, racial differences are taken into account and rules are applied equally across racial lines. This guidance, however, does not disallow employers to impose standards of neatness, meaning that employers can demand that Black hairstyles are groomed in certain ways. In addition, the EEOC rules still leave the door open for courts to make their own judgments in this realm. So in many ways, This established culture of disfavoring Black hairstyles comes back to the employer and back to cultural norms. What many non-Black people in positions of power at employing institutions fail to understand is the significance, both culturally and practically, that hairstyles such as cornrows, dreadlocks, braids, twists, and Bantu knots hold within their designs. On the historical front, the stigmatization of Black hair was implemented as a device to justify the horrors of slavery and colonization. This we know. On the earlier side of the 20th century, straightening tools and chemical products for Black hair were en vogue, as was the suppression of Black communities. In the 60s came the natural hair movement, where Black activists sported their hair textures as a political emblem of resistance. And today, hair continues to be an outward statement that fights for the anti-disenfranchisement of Black people in America. But these hairstyles are not intensely personal because of history alone. They are also about lifestyle and day-to-day wear. In terms of practicality of these hairstyles, Black hair demands protection due to the texture of Black hair, including the curl's tightness and elasticity. It's more likely to experience damage when not properly cared for. Thus, hairstyles such as braids and locks serve as protective styles, which lower physical manipulation of the hair and promote hair health. And all these things together, history and practicality, should be more than sufficient to the legal profession to recognize and appreciate the beauty, the individuality, and the validity of Black hair. Halfway through my 1L summer at a law firm, I bit the bullet and I showed up to work in braids rather than my usual bun. And it was me, it's part of who I am, and it's not something that I should ever have to explain. So earlier this year, as Angela was talking about, I published a piece about my experience with wearing braids in the legal workplace. And there's a part of that article that I want to leave you with. And it goes like this. The truth of the matter is that braids are compatible with the legal profession. In fact, they are extremely reminiscent of the important qualities of a great lawyer. Braids outwardly convey strength and resilience, especially when it comes to the lived experience of Black women. Our curl patterns create a stronghold for the braided hair to attach to in such an enduring manner as to last through the wear and tear of life. And that's just what Black women are, enduring. I am proud to be able to show up to work and be myself. To be anything else would be to be disingenuous. And I refuse to let the fear of criticism hold me back. And I challenge each of you, particularly the law students, to do the same. We are literally the change that this industry needs. So thank you all for listening, and thank you to the organizers, Angela, of this amazing conference for creating this space. If anyone wants to talk further, please reach out. Otherwise, have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. All right, so now there's food out there. It's not particularly labeled well. It looks good, it smells good. They did not bring us drinks, unfortunately. But there is food out there. I think there might be a drinks machine around here. I'm going to play the video. This is 100 Black TV and film lawyers. So this is just, I think representation matters. But what you see, what you'll see is Black TV and film lawyers going back from, just before Amos and Andy to Oscar and Michelle, all the way up to present day. And you can see, I've always been interested in the various hair trends. And you'll notice that certain actors repeatedly play lawyers. I think when you become 40, 45, 50, you're a Black woman actress and you have natural hair, you will be a district attorney at some point. So there's food out in the hallway. Feel free to go out and get some. After the food, you can bring the food in here and eat. You can eat while you're listening. I'm up next speaking. I'll probably condense what I'm saying so that I can give the other speakers more time. And also because the research that I've done, it would take way more time than I actually have time to go through. So I'll just give you just a tiny micro bite of what I do. So feel free to eat, and I'm going to play the video. And we're trying to limit it to a 5-minute break. It might take a little longer than that. Just come back to that.
I think this is the last.
All right. Okay, I'm just gonna give a quick call for people outside the door.
Thank you. I love this.
All those copies and stuff.
All right. Now, because we had to make up some time, we're gonna skip my section. But I will give you the sort of bare facts of what what's come out of my research. So we did a survey of Black legal professionals, lawyers, attorneys, solicitors, barristers, paralegals, US, UK. And we asked a number of questions, all of which can be found on the program guide anthology. I have some printed copies of the anthology, but because it is $10 per print, and I've had to self-fund it, I only have limited copies available. But it is all available online on the website. And essentially what we found is that Black women, when they go to interview at law firms, tend to straighten their hair for the interview. And then after they have the job, will revert to wearing their hair in some other style. That's sort of the long and the short. And there's the other answers and other experiences in the survey that I encourage you to read. So How about the next 1 second? Binta, I'm sorry to tear you away from your food. No worries. All right, so this is Binta, and one reason why she is so qualified to speak on this topic is because she works in big law and she owns a hair salon. She's the founder. She's the founder of Vision's Beauty Bar. And so law and Black hair, like we've got the package here.
Yeah, that all I talk about is project finance and braids. So do you have the slide? Oh. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak at this event today. And I think the topic is absolutely on point. And besides being on point, it's an important issue. Unfortunately, it's an issue. Our hairs are oftentimes, like I always say to people, people see our hair before they see us. Whether it's good or bad, they see our hair before they see us. I met a lovely young lady here today while I was standing in Food Line. And I remember when I was sitting in the back, what I noticed was her hair. And I was like, her afro is fly. And that's just a small example. So in this case, it was a positive example, but similarly, sometimes our hair is seen before us and it's for negative reasons. So when it comes to Black people, it's just hair until it's not. And I think for us, it's been demonstrated over and over again that it's not just hair, because it's just your hair until it's unprofessional, until it becomes what stops you from getting a promotion, or it becomes what stops you from earning your wages. I think for Black people, it's just hair until it's political. When we decide that as a political statement or as a socio-political statement, you're going to normalize being your authentic self. And while it might seem like a small thing, it takes a lot of courage. And it's just hair until for us, it's our identity. And you see how much of it is tied to you. So there's so much to say. I've been told that I have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna try, and I'm a talker. So I'm gonna try to stick to the 10 minutes, or it's not even gonna try. I will stick to the 10 minutes. And what I'd like to do is share, as Angela said, I'm the founder of Vision's Braid Bar, which is a braid bar that specifically caters to Black women in Maryland. It's a modern braid bar. And through my experiences with Visions, I have had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people, whether it be men or women, but typically Black people. And it's just amazing how much of our identities are tied to hair. So I'm going to touch on this idea of hair being unprofessional, political, and hair being being our identities through 3 anecdotes. One of which is related to me, 2 of which are related to clients who have come to the shop. And while these are individual stories, I absolutely think that they epitomize experiences that almost every single Black woman in this room has had. So if we go to the first slide, about a year or so ago, Vision's Braid Bar sent an email to clients. It was just like a customer marketing type of email. And the email went out to clients that we hadn't seen in a while, trying to figure out like, hey, how do we re-engage with these individuals? And one of the individuals who responded to the email was a young Black guy who had been to the shop several times. Typically when he comes, all he does is get cornrows going straight back. He gets shampoos and all that type of stuff. So the purpose of it was really just trying to re-engage. And we figured that he probably fired us, maybe he went on elsewhere. He responded to our email and said, hey, Binta, first off, I want to say that I love the shop, but I cut my hair back in June because I got promoted to marketing manager which required meeting with existing and prospective clients. So myself and my boss felt a haircut would increase my professionalism. When I read that, I literally almost cried. And I'm not being dramatic, but I literally almost cried because meeting this gentleman, he's someone who's mild-tempered, comes off very professional. And the idea that he would be so judged that someone would think that his substance would be different, that something like it's like everything about you is the same, but your hair makes you unprofessional, was sad. Though he's not a lawyer, I think if a marketing manager experiences that, I think any Black person, whether we're attorneys, non-attorneys, especially the more conservative the industry you work in is, the more you would actually experience that. And this happened about a year ago, so this was completely unprompted, and it had absolutely nothing to do with this symposium. But when I was asked to be a speaker, that was the first thing that came to my mind. So it's okay for us to be Black, but we just can't be too Black. So just remember that, y'all. Then throughout history, we've shown over and over, you can go to the next slide, please. Throughout history, we've shown over and over again that for Black people, our hair can be used to make political statements because we know that it's not just hair. So by you deciding to wear your hair a particular way, while it might seem like a cosmetic or an aesthetic issue, you're actually doing a lot more. You're standing up and you're saying no to Eurocentric standards of beauty. And that in of itself is a political statement. And you're deciding that you're going to normalize being authentic and you're going to not code switch. And those might seem small, but and when you take them on a micro level, yes. But if all of us decided to do that on a macro level, it would take us really far. And this point actually, the next anecdote relates back to a point Professor Page made during her presentation. I recently met someone at Visions Braid Bar who's an attorney also working in big law. For the ladies who get your braids done, you know, typically, like, you know, there's color 1B, which is like the standard color. And typically when we're trying to be professional and we don't want to come off too ghetto or whatever the case might be, we stick to the solid colors. You know, you're just going to do 1B because that's a Black color and that's cool. So I met someone who was using 1B27. For the non-braid wearers, 1B27 is like a dark blonde, dark black, dark brown mixed with blonde. And I was like, not a big deal, it's a popular color. But through conversations with her, I realized that she was an attorney. And I asked her, I'm like, oh wow, do you feel comfortable wearing your hair in a 1B27 for the style you're wearing? Because it wasn't, I wouldn't have thought anything had it been 1B. And she said to me that for her, it used to be an issue. How she wore her hair was an issue. And at the beginning of her career, she did only stick to those solid colors. But then during the pandemic, when she started working from home, during the social uprising that came about in our country after the George Floyd killing, she thought that her way of showing people, like, I guess in her mind, the way, because she couldn't go out to march for various reasons. So for her, the way she could make a stand, show her stance or make a political statement was by being her authentic self. So for us, it's just hair until it's political. The next piece I'll go to is, for us, it's just hair until it's our identity. This bit is a bit personal for me, and you can read more about it in, I have a reflection in the program guide anthology. But growing up, I grew up in West Africa, and you think Africa, oh, you know, the darker, like the darker you are, the more beautiful, the kinkier your hair, the more beautiful, but the reality is that wasn't the case. So growing up, I did everything necessary to elongate my natural hair, whether that meant getting a relaxer. When I think my first relaxer was maybe at the age of 9 or so, or using extensions to elongate my hair. But everything I did as a child, and it wasn't just me, but on a societal level, we did so much to get closer to Eurocentric standards of beauty. reality is like the more relaxers you get, the more braids you get. While braids are protective styles, they are protective styles until they're not. If you're getting braids on braids back to back, your edges will run away. So they will run and hide. So by my early 20s, I had started to experience traction alopecia. So I think I must have been a freshman in college, and I had to cut my hair. Because I'm dark skinned, because I have a loud mouth and all of these things, I'm sure most people probably thought I was cutting my hair to make a statement. Because as a Black person, when you cut your hair and you do your big chop, it's because you're saying no to Eurocentric standards of beauty. But in my case, it wasn't. I had to cut my hair because I didn't have a choice. Because years and years of not properly treating my hair had resulted in me having traction alopecia. And you can go to the next slide. So over the course of the last 20 years, I probably had I think I have a big chop every 12 to 18 months because my hair, unfortunately, doesn't grow the way I want it to grow. My hair, unfortunately, when I get stressed, have hormonal issues, whatever the case might be, I end up losing hair. And every time I go to the barber, the one thing I will always say to them is like, don't shape up my hairline too sharply because I don't want to look masculine. Because as a dark-skinned Black woman, I know that my hair is seen for I'm seen. And I know that if I walk in a room with a haircut short, people are already making certain assumptions about my sexuality, my personality type, whether I'm a strong, angry Black woman, whatever the case may be. I know that it's not just hair. There's so much of my hair that's tied to my identity in the way I see myself and also in the way the world judges me. Thank you, Angela. I hope I didn't go over the point.
Okay, now we have Desiree Langley. Desiree is an alum of George Mason. I believe you were the BALSA president.
Yes.
For your, was it 2007,
2016, 2017.
So a little bit about homecoming. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be back at Mason. I graduated from this law school in 2017. I want to make two acknowledgements before I kind of share a little bit about my natural hair journey and the decisions that I made in law school and moving into the legal fields. First, as we've heard a lot today from other speakers, I think we all can agree that Black hair isn't only beautiful, but it is truly magic. The magic and being able to transform, shapeshift, be styled and manipulated in all its glorious ways. And for whatever reason we choose to, there's beauty in it. And I firmly believe folks can and should wear their hair however they want, for whatever reason they want. And, you know, we shouldn't be in the business of minding other people's business. The second thing is I recognize my perspective is that of a mixed race, light-skinned Black woman, and that I might not share the same exact anxieties, concerns, uncertainties when deciding how to style my hair that other women, brown-skinned women, may deal with based on, you know, colorism and perceptions that non-Black women have. I also acknowledge that we all face varying levels of those anxieties, concerns, and uncertainties depending on hair texture. So my journey for me, I kind of boils down to three considerations. Do I love the way I look? Work-life balance, or life-work balance, as I like to call it, and increasing my productivity. So as I stated, Black hair is magic, and for me, I love versatility. So for instance, I started a new role in September, just last month, and I have shown up to work with 4 completely different hairstyles, varying lengths, completely different looks, even different from what I interviewed at. And that is really important to me, and the way, you know, that I form my identity, and I'll get to it a little bit in a second. But, you know, we've all talked about bringing our authentic self to work. And part of that for me, especially, you know, as I get older, my identity is not being a lawyer. It's a very small part of my identity. And so I choose how to present myself, not based on what I'm doing, you know, for work. Now, granted, that does come with, you know, anxiety and uncertainty, and that's not to say that I haven't faced that either, you know. I mean, I remember in law school, my first year as a 1L, I showed up to orientation with my natural hair. It was curly at the time. I recently locked it, but I remember my 1L year, I straightened it for the first time, and the one amount of people who maybe didn't recognize me / the amount of non-Black colleagues that told me they loved my hair like this, it's so pretty like this, that had never commented on my hair previously, you know, all of that, you know, it does affect you, and you have to, you know, really, like I think Binta was saying, you know, be courageous and stand in your truth. In terms of working at a big law firm, I still have anxiety. I mean, I have starter locks right now. I'm almost a year locked, but the texture of my hair, it takes a little bit longer for it to flip lock. And so I remember making the conscious decision when I was interviewing of, okay, I'm gonna cover them with faux locks. It's still, you know, a natural style, it's a protective style, but I feel better. I love the way I look going into this. It's going to ease my anxiety interviewing, which is already anxiety ridden, right? And so I made that decision to go in that way. But I've also kind of noticed that, you know, aside from comments where non-Black partners or colleagues comment on either my hair or a coworker's hair. For example, a couple weeks into a new position, another Black woman that I started with had her hair natural for the first 2 weeks, and then showed up to work, you know, with bundles, as that's her, you know, right? You know, I love them. And we walk into a meeting, and a non-Black partner immediately says, upon both entering, wow, I love your hair, like that to her. That was also the first day that I wore my natural locks to work. And so, you know, I'm at a point now where it's happened frequently enough where the effect isn't the same, but it's still kind of like is there in the back of your mind. But even when I have anxiety about, you know, presenting myself and what clients or how clients are perceiving me, like sometimes I'll sit on a Zoom trying to see, where are they looking at? Are they making faces? Like, what do they think, you know? And it's like, you can never know what someone is thinking. And I also realize, especially in big law, you know, I think the concerns that partners have are you making your billable hours? Are you bringing in new clients? Are you turning in quality work? And so I haven't had any, you know, real issues with, you know, switching up my look, wearing my hair the way that it is. And so, you know, I think that is a good thing. The second consideration for me is life-work balance. Part of the balance, like I said before, work-life balance isn't just about, you know, not overworking and taking time for yourself and for your family. It's also, you know, outside of being a lawyer, there are many aspects of my identity and how I choose to dress and how I choose to wear my hair and the things that I choose to do in my spare time. I am not going to give you 40 to 50 hours every week and still have you control what I do with, you know, my appearance. Like, there's so many other things in my life, and this is one part of it. So it's just not going to control it. But that is a decision that I have personally made. Yeah. Repeat it up. Okay. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Okay.
So next, we have Professor Wendy Greene. She is one of the advisors and architects of the Crown Act, the various, there's not just one Crown, there are various Crown Acts. It's her advisement and research that's really put the backbones onto the law.
So far this program I'm applying for next fall. Okay. I was no, yeah, minority. But I actually work in marketing. But it's doing my programs. If you connect, I'm later like inside. But I'm gonna ask you the first. No, you can't even stand. I can't see you.
Okay, well, we'll try to make this work. I'll just have to tell you, I'm used to, maybe this is a bad thing, I'm used to being in control. So it's gonna be an exercise of, releasing control as we're talking about control over our bodies. So thank you so much, Angela, for inviting me to be a part of this important symposium and conversation about Black hair, about big law. And I would say that even though this is the title of the presentation, Civil Rights, Law, and Lawyering, what's hair got to do with it, I think a sub-theme really is about how American law has not been compatible with and to Black hair and African descendants' experiences. And our human right, frankly, to express our cultural and our racial and our religious identities, among others. So we'll go to the next slide here. African descendants hair texture, I'm sure as you probably have already gathered throughout this conversation, has been and continues to be a source of pride, joy, inspiration, resistance, religious expression, alongside cultural and creative expression. Though often not discussed or simply just unknown, combating the denial of our most basic human rights on the basis of our natural hair texture and hairstyles, like similarly battling discrimination on the basis of our skin complexion, is deeply embedded in African descendants' liberation struggle since our ancestors' forced migration to unknown parts of the world to serve as enslaved laborers. Like our skin complexion and other characteristics signifying our African ancestry. We can go to the next slide. Like our skin complexion and other characteristics signifying our African ancestry, African descendants' natural hair textures and hairstyles like afros, braids, locks, twists, and Bantu knots have served as a source of racial enslavement, apartheid, exclusion, and stigmatization for nearly four centuries. Indeed, early American jurists declared a woolly hair texture or a hair texture that was inclined to be woolly signified African ancestry or Blackness, and an individual straight hair texture signified one's European ancestry or whiteness. Therefore, according to American jurists, a person could be consigned to enslavement solely on the basis of their woolly hair texture, independent of their skin complexion, and the straightness of one's hair could legally render a person free, or at least the presumption, legal presumption of freedom. So for nearly 4 centuries, like our skin color, African descendants hairstyles resulting from our curly or coily hair texture have served as not only a marker of our racial identity, but also in turn, a vehicle to deprive us of our basic human right to be free from bondage, exclusion, and segregation, and other forms of undignified treatment on the basis of race. And we can go to the next slide here. Actually, the next slide. At the height of the 20th century civil rights movement, Congress passed several pieces of legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to address longstanding racial exclusion, subordination, and segregation spheres like employment, housing, voting, education, and public accommodations. With Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act in particular, Congress sought to remove arbitrary barriers to Black Americans' equal access to employment opportunities and their corresponding economic security and enjoyment of freedom. Next slide. Soon after Congress enacted the seminal piece of civil rights legislation, we see Black women and men publicly challenging workplace grooming policies, barring their natural hairstyles as forms of not only racial discrimination, but also sexual discrimination, as well as an infringement upon their cultural expression. And we see this here with Deborah Enix-Ross, who in 1969 publicly declared that United Airlines placed her on a suspension and then ultimately terminated her because she refused to change her afro. And according to United Airlines, they said that her afro didn't comply with their short hair look policy. And I would argue that her hair actually does like perfectly comply with this short hair policy, but nonetheless, she's terminated. And in 1976, the U.S. Court of Appeals for Seventh Circuit ruled that a Black woman who was denied a promotion because her supervisor stereotyped her as being unfit to represent the company policy, while donning an afro presented an actionable Title VII claim of race discrimination. Next slide. Then we see that even contemporarily, that Black women and men in our workplaces and other spaces are oftentimes discriminated against. We are harassed, we are losing employment opportunities, educational opportunities, housing opportunities, and so many more in the public sphere simply on the basis of our natural hairstyles, and oftentimes because of the negative associations with these natural hairstyles, namely being stigmatized as being unkempt, disheveled, unprofessional, aberrant, radical, militant, unruly, distracting, wrong, extreme, unusual, unattractive, and unacceptable. Next slide. And unfortunately, in light of, even though we are experiencing discrimination and harassment on the basis of our natural hairstyles, when you present these types of claims, race-based natural hair discrimination claims in federal court, we're often met without any kind of legal recourse. Really harkening back to 1981 and a very similar decision by a federal district court in New York in Rogers versus American Airlines, where the federal district court affirmed that if an employer discriminated against a Black worker for wearing an afro, that could amount to unlawful race discrimination and violation of Title VII's prohibitions against race discrimination. However, the court held that a workplace grooming policy that barred Ms. Rogers from wearing her cornrow braids did not violate federal civil rights protections against race discrimination. And so for 4 decades, federal courts have repeatedly adopted the ruling in Rogers versus American Airlines that basically declares that if an employer fires a Black woman because she wears an afro, this adverse employment action would constitute unlawful race discrimination because they are immutable characteristics of Blackness or African ancestry, based upon this idea that only Black people rock afros or are born with afros, which we know is not true, or that if you do wear an afro, then you must be Black, which we also know that's not true, right? And so in light of this, natural and protective hairstyles like braids, according to courts, are deemed mutable cultural characteristics that an employer therefore is free to regulate, since federal civil rights laws do not prohibit discrimination on the basis of culture. Next slide. Most recently in EEOC versus Catastrophe Management Solutions, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals fortified this, what I call a hair-splitting legal distinction, by declaring that Title VII protects African descendants from racial discrimination on the basis of afros because afros are an immutable hair texture of African descendants, whereas an employer's rescission of a Black woman's employment offer because she refused to cut off her locks, in this case, Chastity Jones refused to cut off her locks, did not violate Title VII because her locks were deemed a mutable cultural hairstyle. So next slide. Applying this misguided doctrine shaped by what I have argued is a biological notion of race, for over 40 years, federal courts have boldly declared that when an employer denies an African descendant a job because she adorns an afro, the employer engages in unlawful race discrimination.
However, the moment you twist, you lock, or you braid that afro and suffer adverse treatment on those grounds, the employer's discrimination is deemed lawful. So what does that mean? Employers are then essentially free to demand that African descendant men and women alter, cover, or cut off their natural hairstyles as a condition of employment, oftentimes impose as a condition of employment that you straighten your hair. And employers are also free to discipline and harass and deprive Black workers promotions and related compensation for simply donning their hair as it naturally grows, unless it's an afro. Next slide. This hair splitting legal distinction has left countless African descendant women, men, and girls and boys without legal recourse when challenging a racial discrimination on the basis of their natural hairstyles and the resulting harms of this discrimination. Therefore, the need for legal reforms which redress racial discrimination in all of its manifestations. Next slide. Appreciating the significance of substantive, not symbolic legislation to redress this kind of legal inequality, before there was even a Crown Act, in 2013 and 2014, I lobbied those members of Congress, informing them of this hair-splitting legal distinction that was leaving countless individuals of African descent without legal recourse when they were challenging race-based natural hair discrimination. And in particular, in 2014, I mailed a letter to the entire female membership of the Congressional Black Caucus, chaired by then Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, as they were actively engaged in the reformation of the United States military's grooming policies that barred service women from wearing natural hairstyles, calling them unkempt and matted. In this letter, I explained that countless Black workers in the private sector lack federal civil rights protections against race-based natural hair discrimination, except for in that limited case of afros in light of this federal jurisprudence. Next slide. In this old school mailing, I also included my 2008 publication, Title VII, What's Hair and Other Race-Based Characteristics Got to Do with It, in which I proposed a definition of race that you can see here, which is now iterations of this definition of race are now being adopted in Crown Act's parallel civil rights legislation and endorsed by federal and administrative law judges. And in so doing, I recommended the revision of our federal civil rights laws to attend to not only race-based natural hair discrimination, but all manifestations of racial discrimination that were going unredressed under federal civil rights jurisprudence. And I went on to, as I mentioned before, to lobby to this effect. And as we know, next slide, for civil rights legislation to come to fruition, we all know that it takes not only a constellation of social, legal, and political stars to align, but many, more importantly, the dedicated advocacy and support of many. In the United States and other countries, natural hair discrimination has been a lawful basis for racial discrimination until more recently with the enactment of groundbreaking enforcement guidance from civil and human rights agencies, judicial decisions, and civil rights legislation commonly known as the Crown Acts, or Creating a Respectful and Open World or Workplace for Natural Hair Acts. And I have to say, it really should not have to take legislation to declare that our human right to wear our hair as it naturally grows. However, in the United States, civil rights legislation has been a really important tool to cure this unjustifiable gap in federal civil rights protections against race discrimination that our federal courts have created. So the civil rights legislation that we often hear about, known as being the Crown Acts, parallel civil rights legislation, importantly provides a clarifying definition of race, and in some cases, race and national origin, which delineates that characteristics that are historically, commonly, or just simply associated with race animate unlawful racial discrimination. Some of this legislation also reflects the intersectionality and overlapping nature of experience for many African descendants. Wearing natural hairstyles like locks is a feature of our racial identity, our religious or ethnic identity, just as wearing a hijab is the expression of many Muslim women's religious personhood. Through this civil rights legislation, like many anti-discrimination laws are grounded, or though this civil rights legislation, like many anti-discrimination laws, are grounded in the experience of African descendants, this legislation, is important to note, protects all people from racial discrimination and fortifies a very central purpose of civil rights law, by removing a common dilemma that individuals should never have to face, being forced to choose between the expression of their racial, ethnic, or religious identity and an employment or educational or housing opportunity or any other opportunities in the public sphere. Though the Crown Act makes clear that discrimination on the basis of natural hairstyles that African descendants commonly wear are associated with our cultural aesthetic constitutes unlawful race discrimination, the Crown Act and parallel civil rights legislation are equalizers and unifiers. This legislation does not render special treatment, but rather ensures equal treatment under the law for all who encounter racial discrimination. So fast forward, next slide. In 2019, we see the Crown Coalition, actually we can go back a little bit. We see in 2019, we see the Crown Coalition advancing civil rights legislation in California. California was the first to enact a Crown law. Actually, if we go back to 2 slides. No worries. In California, New York, this is the Crown Act of 2019 for California. I served as a legal expert and testified on this behalf. We see also New York and New Jersey passing these original Crown Acts. And in doing so, using not only my legal scholarship and advocacy, but also the scholarship and advocacy of other legal academics like Paulette Caldwell from NYU and Professor Angela Washi-Willig, who is the Dean at Boston University School of Law. As a legal expert, advisor, and co-drafter of now over 20 pieces of civil rights legislation in the United States, including California and the Federal Crown Act, which has been passed twice by the United States House of Representatives. And it's important to know that one of those individuals who is extremely helpful is actually here. So Jelena Porter was extremely fundamental in making sure that the Federal Crown Act was not only crafted, but also passed twice. And so it's been a tremendous privilege to work in partnership with individuals like Jelena, with legislators, grassroots organizers, civil and human rights agencies, and everyday citizens across the country to advance a history-making piece of civil rights legislation that combats the systemic deprivation of employment, loss of compensation, professional advancement, educational opportunities, and other infringements upon our dignity and freedom, such as the persistent policing and harassment Black people often experience when donning natural hairstyles like braids, locks, twists, and afros. So that being said, unbeknownst to many, this legislation now has been enacted in 19 states and over 40 municipalities, and in doing so, it intercepts centuries of lawful racial discrimination that African descendants have endured on the basis of our natural hair texture and hairstyles. And I'll go to just sort of some of the last slides here. Just in the interest of time. Oh, can we go back really really quickly? Because I just wanted to make sure that also that we're not only talking about legislation, but it's also important to note that there's really some really important litigation that's going on in this space as well. That's really overturning some of these centuries of, or say decades of legal precedent that declares that natural hair discrimination is not race discrimination. And this is just one of those cases that the Legal Defense Fund has taken on behalf of DeAndre Arnold and Caden Bradford. And you might have heard about them. They're students in Texas. DeAndre Arnold was told that he would not be able to participate in his graduation unless he cut off his locks. His cousin likewise was unable to matriculate and engage in extracurricular activities. They both had to transfer to new schools because they were deemed in violation of their grooming policy that prohibited male students from wearing their hair or growing their hair that made it look like it had the propensity to touch their shoulders. Okay, so but importantly, I'm serving as a legal expert in this case, but importantly for the first time in federal jurisprudence, to my knowledge, a federal court actually has declared that they have brought forth actionable claims of race discrimination in violation of our 14th Amendment, actionable claims of sex discrimination in violation of the 14th Amendment, and also an actionable claim of infringement upon their cultural expression in violation of our First Amendment. So there has been even more legal reforms other than the legislation. Additionally, there's been groundbreaking enforcement guidance, like for example, out of the New York City Commission on Human Rights. And then also just wanting to make everyone aware of this new litigation that really is quite important and may be proceeding through our judicial process. So next slide really quickly. And all of this really for me has resulted in what I call the hashtag Free the Hair mission. All of you have buttons or should be able to get a button. And this is really the culmination of over 15 years of legal scholarship and research and writing and publications, really trying to ensure that the systemic discrimination that African descendants around the world endure on the basis of our natural hairstyles comes to an end. That this no longer has to be not only a civil rights issue for the 21st century, but for the centuries to come. And so this is all a part of a broader body of work, next slide, that I call grooming codes discrimination, which really helps to embody the kinds of discrimination that we're experiencing on the basis of our grooming and appearance that I think are not only infringement upon our personhood, but really do implicate our civil rights protections against race discrimination, among other types of protected classifications under our civil rights laws. And so last slide. And so the Free the Hair movement, alongside the Crown Act movement and other types of movements that are really happening around the world as it relates to trying to bring about legal and policy reforms to combat race-based grooming codes discrimination, really to speak the words of American civil rights lawyer and pioneer Pauli Murray. She said that the business of oppression is not respecting one's personhood. And again, she said the business of oppression is not respecting one's personhood. And so it is my hope that as we are continuing these conversations, as we're learning about one another's experiences and observing the differences, and I see the positive differences in who we are through the ways in which we may rock our hair or wear certain clothes, or the ways in which we're just navigating throughout society, that we are no longer engaging in the business of oppression by implementing and enforcing grooming policies and norms that both perpetuate a racialized hierarchy of acceptability, attractiveness, and professionalism, and dishonor one's unique personhood, culture, and identity. Thank you.
All right, we have one last speaker here. I know we're going just a little bit over 1 o'clock, but if you'll stay with me because it's a treat. So I was in London last week, a few days ago, actually. I graduated from there. I got my LLB. I'm doing my LLM now. Thank you. I met with Lesley Thomas, KC, King's Counsel. He's a barrister over there. And for those of you who don't know, in the UK, legal work is split between barristers and solicitors, roughly. Barristers do the sort of court advocacy, solicitors do more of the background stuff. And over here in the States, attorneys will do a bit of both, depending on what area of law you go into. But he's written this book. I haven't read it yet because I only got it a couple of days ago, but I hear it's fabulous. It's called Do Right and Fear No One. It's his autobiography. He is very well known in the UK. He's got his own Wikipedia page. So we are going to hear from Professor Lesley Thomas.
Good morning. I think it's morning where you are. It's evening where I am. I'm assuming that everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Let me start. Every child deserves to be celebrated for who they are and to thrive in school without having to worry about changing their appearance to suit a potentially discriminatory policy. That was our Human Rights Commission today. That report came out, and it was quite timely, bearing in mind that I was going to be speaking today. I want to ask a question. Is our profession immune from racism? Do we as legal professionals somehow consider ourselves higher mortals? Well, let me tell you something. Our justice system is not immune. It merely a reflection on wider society, and as the profession is an integral part of society, the same prejudices, biases can be found among us. As Lowell said in his book, The Clapback, it's tiring to always have to push back against the notice that somehow we are lesser, to constantly have to justify our existence, our entitlement to basic civil rights and the need for equality. In the UK, as higher rights advocates, commonly referred to as barristers, in many of our higher criminal courts and some of our civil courts, we have to wear a white wig. But you see, barrister's wig is a ridiculous anachronism which has no place in a modern legal profession. It's a symbol of privilege and exclusion. Now, of course, when I joined the profession 30 years ago, I knew that wigs were part of the uniform. But over the years, I cannot see the point of them. And the arguments for retaining the wig are weak. It's worth remembering the real reason why British barristers started wearing wigs had nothing to do with the solemnity of the court proceedings. No, the idea behind wearing a wig was much more practical. Wigs originally came into the legal uniform for the same reason they entered the general colonial era fashion, because people were riddled with syphilis and lice. And this led to a loss of hearing sufferers. So we wear the wig because it was part of Caucasian 17th century posh fashion of the day, where all high members of British society wore wigs. But it's a throwback and has no place in the 21st century. The wig itches, they're uncomfortable and hot in court, especially in the summer. They're expensive. You know, an ordinary barrister's wig can cost as much as $500. A King's Counsel wig, which is only ceremonial, is $1,300. And this is off-putting to less well-off members of our society who wish to enter the profession. They reek of privilege and exclusion. Now, the other reason is they're just not practicable for certain cultures or religions or hairstyles. Of course, in British society, some faiths and religions can get dispensation from wearing a wig, but this does not apply to certain hairstyles. For example, if you have dreadlocks or an afro, this is part of your identity. You have to tie your locks back or flatten your afro or be made to cut your hair to accommodate a wig, which serves no practical purpose in your ability to do your job as a barrister. Our modern bar is meant to be a welcoming place for all cultures, but symbolically, the wig counters the openness of our profession. It represents a bygone age of white, upper class poshness. Yes, it's been pointed out to me on many occasions by those who wish to retain the wig that many African Commonwealth countries still retain the wig. But that does not make it right, nor is it relevant to the debate as to whether it should be retained. It's for those countries to decide for themselves. But let's remember, the wig, among other things, is also symbolic of previous British colonial rule. Some argue that the wig makes you anonymous, but that argument just doesn't hold up. If you want to have a uniform, and if you want to have anonymity, you have to have a distinction between the advocate and the public. You can do this by wearing a respectful gown. The suggestion that it anonymizes you baffles me, as the wig is not pulled over your face, it's on the top of your head. Does the wig bring a sense of formality and solemnity to proceedings? No. This argument, again, does not hold up to logical scrutiny. In fact, many courts around the world and many courts in the UK no longer have the wig. Take, for example, public inquiries where somebody has died a sudden sometimes violent, unknown death. You can't think of a more serious type of court proceedings. Many of you will have heard of the Grenfell fire disaster that happened in London 5 years ago. That was an inquiry, but not one wig was in sight. And yet that case happened to have all the seriousness of court proceedings. And if the proof of the pudding is in the eating, we in the UK need only look across the pond to you in the States. And if there ever was an argument for the scrapping of the wigs as being pointless, the wig's not part of your court dress, but justice carries on without detriment. In our High Court and our Court of Appeal, judges no longer have to wear the wig when presiding over civil cases, or in our Supreme Court, justice has not collapsed. And contrary to the warnings of chicken licking, the sky has not fallen in. Thank you. Angela, we can't hear you online.
Thank you, sorry. I would like to thank all of our speakers today. Just one quick reminder, Lesley's book, Do Right and Fear No One, you can get this from Amazon. I am going to read this as soon as I finish my wills, trust, estates exam and my secured actions exams. I want to thank all of our speakers. They all have been fantastic and brought something really interesting to the table, given me so much to think about. I can't thank you enough. This whole symposium, it came together just out of a small idea that I had, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And we have what we had today. And hopefully, you know, this is the first. Maybe there will be another one in another year, maybe next year, maybe after I pass the bar. But I've really enjoyed listening to what everyone has had to say. It's been so interesting. I'm really passionate about this topic. And I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank everyone online who signed in. We're going to make hopefully we'll have the video. I know we had some technical issues at the start. We'll make it available online for you to play again, play back and review. And I know there's the Law 360 video, which I think is so important to watch, especially anyone who's like, you know, in law school, making that jump from law school to law, you know, to being a lawyer. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And have a great afternoon.
One of 11, but
Thank you guys
for sticking in there. And
that's and anytime you can come here, whatever you want to do.
Whenever you're free, I'm usually here Mondays, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm just looking at work. So whenever you're free, watch something. Yeah, I know you're in the middle of Heather, you're so fast. Yeah, thank you for trying to be respectful. Oh, I'm here. I'm staff, so I have the time.
I think part of it is okay.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Well, maybe I
yeah, and that's
yeah.
Now, yeah.
Thank you. Nice.
Oh, okay. Or I mean, I'm getting no, I don't really understand. It's a not only wow. Now, which one I do? Out of here. But I can't do it all by myself. Having is a part of that. So I hope that yes. Yeah. And some ambassadors to our yeah. Well, probably I'm starting. Yeah, so I just decided that conference. For that project. Yeah, so I will definitely be invited. That was recently. Yeah, so it's ever since the busy. Okay. But you know, it started checks. I am. Yeah, so I see it the very first. And so every year. And then yeah. So hear that. So it's support of it. Somebody has. No, Lesley knows her because her mentee when she's studying at Columbia now. Yeah. So they're like 32. Man, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. So she's okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, so she was on her man. She was doing out of but I had so much years. Yeah. The one day off. Yeah. And having yeah, it's cousin of his. So they probably. So if you find her name, and yeah, yeah, whenever you get, yeah, so whenever you get a remote. But like this times break, yeah, the rest. Yeah, I know. Yeah, all of that. That's a huge like.
But I'm yeah. Yeah, so people were just like talking about this. So there's something up to Linden. Wow. Columbia. You're gonna get it. Thank you so much for everything. You're doing outstanding work. You're doing amazing work. I'm so happy. So thank you so much. And